All right, as promised, let's come back to Cooker. I fired up Cooker uh, while I took a quick pause, and here's what it looks like. Let's kind of navigate through and see what we have. So, in our main route, it just says Cooker, and here are the recipes. So when we go here, it says recipes. We're seeing an index page which is showing all the recipes. This is the public view, right? So we have two recipes, one made by Drew and one made by Sam. So pizza by Drew, and there it is. And then we have a link back to all the recipes, so we can kind of toggle back and forth there. Recipes have comments. Apparently, there are two comments on this. And then there's a comment by Sue. There's a comment by an unknown, so you don't know who that comment was. It's anonymous. Then we can go into the comment, and we can see there are two images related to this comment. And so then, as you hopefully you're watching up here, the URL is changing. So there's your images. I'll go back here. You can see the URL kind of build itself there. If we go to Sam, there were no comments and no comment yet. This is what it says. All right, it looks like we can go back. All right, now, was Test Kitchen a thing? And Test Kitchen is a thing, but it looks like we haven't done anything here. So what we'll do is I would like to build out the Test Kitchen. I would like to build out CookSteps, just like we did in the earlier. And then I would like to build out tips for those CookSteps. And then, is there anything else? Let me see. I would also like a place for ingredients. So we'll add ingredients, and I think that's it. So let me pull it up. Let's see. Let me pull up VS Code. So here is our cooker. I'm running I did my run kind of off video, so but just so you can see it's here, I'm in cooker, and that pulled up VS Code. And then this is watching for CSS changes, so that's Tailwind. Then here's our app running. So as we navigated through, we saw these things. Here's our shell commands where we can test stuff out. And then this is our hot reloading if you want, watching for file changes and refreshing the browser. All right. So we'll come here because we'll need to run a couple of Flask commands. So here under app, under model, I have, let's see what we have. We have recipe, we have comment images, we saw all that. And then we saw the routes for recipe. Oh, and look, so this is where it's great when you haven't come to some code in a while and you build it in the structure that we've been talking about for such a long time. You can quickly see, oh, I already have Test Kitchen. And Test Kitchen, well, that's a namespace. At least it looks like it's probably a namespace to me because there's no routes for Test Kitchen, but there's another folder, recipes, under here. That's the end folder for that. And sure enough, Test Kitchen is a route. So that's great. It looks like I've already built out Test Kitchen, so I could, but it doesn't look like I've done anything in here, and we can verify that with the templates under Test Kitchen, and there is nothing changed here. So first things first, if we're wanting to build all the RESTful actions for Test Kitchen, we'll do that. Let's go ahead and do our Flask commands and build out CookStep and tip. So I want Flask make model, and then Test Kitchen, recipe, And I want CookStep to be one thing. The recipe is already registered, so when I do this, CookStep will become one thing. We're going to say CRUD, and that's all we need because we're making the model. It's not all we need nest. Otherwise, I'm going to get prompted. So run that. All right. And then do the same thing, but add in tip. Okay. So let's see what got created over here in my models. So like this, app, models, here's my init, there's CookStep, there's tip. Good. And if we go to the browser, we should see things at least wired up. Test kitchen recipe 1, CookSteps, good. CookStep 2, good. Tips, excellent. And tips 3. All right, so we'll go back to just everything's wired up, no 404 errors. That's what I was checking. And we'll go back to the test kitchen recipe controller, and let's bring in some things so that we can see what's going on. So let's go here. All right, so I'm gonna go to my controllers. I've got a whole bunch of controllers, and I'm looking in test kitchen recipe controller. So right now it's a plain controller. And as far as videos go, what I'm going to do, just so you know, I am going to fill out this full scenario here, and then over here we might do like the index and the show. I don't want this to be like a 4-hour video or something like that. So as far as the index page goes, I need all the recipes, right? So that's going to be recipe.query.all. And it's like, I don't know what recipe is. You will when we import it. So here we'll do this. I just bring it from here. All right. And then we can say recipes equals recipes. Excellent. All right, so we'll do that. Now on the show page, I need a particular recipe. I just need the recipe from the recipe ID. So recipe is equal to recipe.query.get or 404. So what this does is it looks for this recipe ID in the table recipes, and if it does not find it, it returns a 404 error for us. So we don't have to, it kind of saves us a step in writing. So recipe equals recipe. So what I'm doing down here is I'm providing the template with some variables. Now, I did this on the create. If you recall, our recipe model, I go here, look at our recipe model, it has an author ID. And so I need to send over the users so that when you're creating a recipe, you can say who the author is. Ideally, you would probably have some kind of login process, and the author would just be the current logged in user. I don't want to go into all of that. We're really just showing Flask Commands, and this is kind of extra on Flask Commands. So I don't want to go extra. So we're going to pass in all the users. And user.query.filter. And let's see. Right now, if I did all the users, I would just do that. Does user have whether they are an author on them? So let's go to the model user, and I'm not seeing whether this person is an author. So let's come and maybe we'll do that. So let's create a new column under, we'll do it right after password hash. We'll do is author, and this is just going to be a Boolean. So db Boolean, and I'm going to default it to false. Now that's going to default it like, this is going to default it in the scenario of the Python code. It's not going to default it for people that are already in the database. So if you want to default for people that are already in the database, so you would do server default equals db false. Okay, and if you didn't have people already in the database, if you said nullable equals true, then you wouldn't need this. You could just move on with life. But I'm going to make it false so that it can't be nullable, which means I have a problem because I already have people in the database. And you would think, okay, well, the default false should just make all those people in the database have the value of false, and that does not do that. That just works going forward when we create a new record through Python code. In order for the default to be false in the database, kind of, you need this server default db false. Okay, not gonna change anything here, but I do need a relationship, don't I? So we'll do relationships. Oh, I already have relationships, and I already have recipes. Good. And I already have comments. Okay, good. I was going to put those in, but they're already there, and they are exactly as I want them. All right, so we'll just go ahead and make this migration. So we'll do Flask. Oh, first you have to be in your virtual environment. Source, then activate. And then we'll do Flask db migrate -m, and then I'm going to say updated users table, and then actually I usually do it just regular like this. It's going to do that when I make the migration, the name of the file. So updated users table, added author is added is author. Okay, so we'll do that and that. Now if I come here and I look under my migrations, versions, so you should see right here, this is what just got created for us. Also, there were a whole bunch of tables that got created, aren't there? So I added CookSteps, and I added tips, and then I altered. So let's just go ahead and update that. So you may want to change your name of that if you want. I'm just going to leave it. And then I'm going to do Flask db upgrade. All right, good thing here. So now if I go to my database for Cooker, let's see here, for Cooker, and I see the tips and the CookSteps, but let's go into user, and is author is right there. And if you, I mean, if you want to move it over, I think I saw this. We did this before. If you want to move it like that, then you can. And then when you close, you can just literally drag it and move. And then when you close Table Plus completely and reopen it and go back to Cooker, then you go back to User, it remembers where you had it. So that's kind of a nice feature. The column, though, is still here. So nevertheless, at least data-wise, you get to see it where you want if you want to reorder it. I think it's a bit easier to do that ordering in MySQL if you want truly to reorder the columns. For right now, I'm not going to worry too much about it. All right, I am going to make Drew a author, and I'm going to well, we have Drew and Sam, right? So we'll make Drew and Sam an author. Okay, so we'll save that. All right. Actually, Sam, let's say Sam used to be an author and is no longer an author. Let's go back. Let's go to user. Sam is now going to be not an author, but Sue's going to be an author. All right. So I'm saving this. I'm pressing Command S. That will save this. All right. So we'll just minimize this. We'll come back here. The reason I wanted to do all that was over here. Now in my controller, I want to just pull the authors. So instead of doing this way and saying users equal users, so right now I'd be sending all my users. But if you want to filter on just the users that can be authors, you would do something like this. User is author equals true. So, and it's yelling because it's like, I don't have a user. So just bring that in. All right. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but let's come here and we will do a print statement here just so you can see it. And we're going to print request.form. And we'll just leave it like that right now. That will be on the store. And then on the edit, we'll come back to the edit because we got to be able to create a recipe first. So let's come up to Flask. It's yelling because it doesn't know. We'll come up to the top, and I think you can just, I'm pressing Command. Oh, not that. That's not what I want. Is it that? Nope. There we go. So I pressed Command period, and that gave me this prompt, and it brought it in. Or you can just go up here and put request up here. It's from Flask. Okay, so we did a lot in the controller. Let's go to our templates under Test Kitchen. Our templates under Test Kitchen. And we're in recipe. Let's start with the index page. We'll just say hello world and make sure that we are in the right place. And sure enough, we are in the right place. Now, let's come over here. We'll do this. We'll split it. Hello world, and then hi. There we go. Okay, so we've got hot reloading happening over here, which is great. So let's see, we're probably going to want to wire these things up so that we can go back and forth between a lot of stuff. So let me pull up my notes here. Okay, so we're gonna have a H1, and I'm just gonna make sure we know we're on Test Kitchen Recipes. Test Kitchen Recipes. All right, so here's our Test Kitchen Recipes. We'll have a link back to recipes index. So we'll just put a paragraph tag in, an unordered list, and then a list item as if this is like some kind of nav bar. And I want to get back to recipes. When I say get back to recipes, I mean I want to be able to click here and go to the index page for recipes. So I'm going to put an anchor tag and we'll wrap this recipes in that anchor tag, and then we will put an href here. And now without even looking, because of the way we've named things, URL for, I'm fairly confident that you will know where we're going. We want recipes index page. So recipes index page. And then boom. There it is. And it gets us back to where we wanted. All right. Let's do a button if you want, which really just an anchor tag for a new recipe. And we'll put an href here. And that will have URL for, and then we need only people in the test kitchen can create new recipes. So we need test kitchen. And when you have the double word, it uses underscore test kitchen. Dot recipes and then create. And let's make sure you understand where this is coming from. So let's go in. So we're in routes, test kitchen. Look at the blueprint. It's right here. It says test kitchen. So then we want recipes here. So you have test kitchen, the init from there, dot recipes. So that's dot recipes, and then the create. So the create. So that's building out test kitchen, recipes, create. All right. And you see all that. And the recipes, this blueprint got registered in Test Kitchen, which is how we were able to do that naming. It all comes from this name here. So Test Kitchen had, when it got named, it was with the underscore. All right, so that creates that. So let's now come back here and we will save this and we'll end up with a link over here. So it says new recipe. Now, when I go here, it should say /create. And sure enough, it does. Excellent. All right, so now let's list out all the recipes that we have because this is the index page. So unordered list. And then I already sent over recipes, so it's for recipe in recipes. And then we'll have to end the for loop. This is Jinja 2. This is not Python. Just do that and then just put end. All right. End for. Okay. so it's similar to Python, but it's not exactly Python, so you have to do this notation here. Okay, unordered list, list item, and then our list item is going to have a, let's do it like this, recipe title, and we can even put by, and then recipe dot author dot username. Okay, and I'm not worried about the n+1 problem right now. I'm just showing you basic setup on laying out things. So that gives us pizza by Drew, salad by Sam. And if I want to link to those, I put an anchor tag around here. Maybe anchor tag the name. And I would link to it, but I would link to it in Test Kitchen because you're in Test Kitchen. So what do I mean by that? I'll put my href here, and oops, already have those. And then we will go into code and we will say URL for, and then it is going to be test kitchen dot recipes dot, and I want the show page, show. Now that requires a recipe ID. So the recipe ID is, and we have recipe right here, so it's recipe.id. All right, so that will allow us to link to the Test Kitchen show. So when I click this, I'm going to end up on Test Kitchen recipe and then the ID number of that recipe. So there's 1 and there's 2. Right now it's taking us to the same page, but we'll build that out. It is always a good idea to put an else in if you're laying out things. So we'll do the else. And so what this else does in a for loop is it gives you something in the event that there is no recipes. That recipes is just the empty set. So, or empty list. No recipes yet. Something like that. That's fine. We won't see that because we actually have recipes in here, and we can remove the recipes and then see that message come up. But for now, this is good enough. Let's, while we're here, let's go flush out this page. And so if I go here, what's great is we wrote a couple commands and we already have everything for us all ready to do the actual work, right? And so this is what I love about Flask Commands, in that I don't want the headache of having to wire up all these things. I just want to go to work and start building the web application. And that's my hope and was my dream for Flask Commands, is that it would allow you to do that. Okay, so let's say we'll come back here. We'll make sure we're in, this is the edit. I want the show, not the edit. Okay, so I'm in here. All right, so we're in the bugs, don't appear from nowhere. Let's start listing out some things here. So we'll go back and we'll put our H1 in, and this will be test kitchen. Here, let's copy some things, make life easier. So we'll do something like this, but maybe not recipes, maybe recipe. And I think it'd be great if we did the recipe title here. So that gets us that. Now, I don't know, is it intuitive to do this. Maybe we anchor tag this. And I mean, this is your app, so make it however you want. I'm just giving some slight demos. Maybe this will go back to the public view of recipe. That, I mean, that makes sense, right? So href here. So we are going to do URL for, and the public side does not have the test kitchen. So it's just recipes, show, and then recipe. ID is recipe.id. All right, save that. And that means now that when I click this, I should go back, and sure enough, I go back and I now see the main public side without the test kitchen on it. So this, you're traversing all over the place now. So let's build a way though to like a nav bar almost to get back to test kitchen. So I would maybe copy this and put it here, but instead of recipes, I want test kitchen recipes. And what do I have to change here? Well, instead of recipe, we're going to do test kitchen dot recipes dot index. And that's it. That's all I need to do. So when I go back here, sure enough, I can now get to test kitchen recipes, and so I can go back and forth here. Excellent, just like a nav bar. Be good to know who the author was, but we do allow for maybe an unknown author. So let's see, is author ID nullable on recipes is the question. Right now I have that, but if I go to structure, author ID is nullable is yes. So the way we set it up, we would need to make it so that you don't have to have an author here. So we'll do a p tag. We'll say the author of pizza, and we'll put in an if condition. So this is kind of cool. So if recipe.author, then we will say recipe.author.username. And then we'll have an else. That makes sense in the if scenario. Unknown. And then we'll end the if. All right. So put some space in there if you want. That's really long, so you can just do it like this if you want. If you have that, else, unknown, and then in the p tag. So maybe something like this. All those spaces aren't going to come into play. They're just going to be a single line. All right, perfect. So then here, what I'd like to be able to do is like edit a recipe and possibly delete the recipe. And then maybe do some more links on the CookSteps, and maybe even go back to the comments. So let's just build a few things out here. So let's put an H2 in. We'll say recipe structure. Okay, and let's do, so just a header, and then let's put in an anchor tag for an edit button. which makes sense. So you're on a recipe, you want to be able to edit it from here. So URL for, and we would edit it in the test kitchen. So it would be test kitchen dot recipes dot edit, and you would need to know which recipe you're editing. So it would have a recipe ID is recipe.id. All right, and in this, and we'll put just the word edit. So that is going to give me an edit button, and it's going to keep me in recipes, but it's going to take me to the edit page, which we haven't done anything with. Okay, and let's do a really destructive one now. Let's do the delete. And delete is a post. So it's actually a form. So you're making a form. And a form has a method and an action. And if you're doing this on an actual website, not this play scenario that we're making right now, you would have CSRF protection and all kinds of data validation and stuff like that. I am just showing you that I'm just showing you that you can use what Flask Commands made for you and quickly build out like a CRUD scenario, and use all RESTful actions. So in here, we are going to do a post. And then, so the action is going to be post, and then I'm going to do a URL for, and then I need to go to the destroy right here under test kitchen. So it is test, kitchen, and I need to put this in quotes. Single quotes, test kitchen dot recipe dot destroy, and then you need to hand it a ID. If you look here, it needs to know the recipe ID. ID is recipe dot ID, and then my form. So that's telling the form where to post to. It will just have a button in it, which is type. So buttons either have, if you're in a form, you actually don't need to put the type, but it's type submit. I think the other type is button. Delete. But it's good practice to put the submit, and tells you, okay, this button will submit this form that it's sitting in. Okay, so the form has a button that has a submit, and this is good. I love this. I missed an S, right? And you probably saw it right there, but Flask is so good, it even kind of knows, hey, you missed this S. Recipes, destroy, I spelled destroy wrong. So destroy. Okay, there we go. So we now have a delete button here, and when you press it, it's just gonna redirect you back to the index page. Why did it do that? If you go here, you'll see a redirect back. It did nothing. It did not delete that recipe. It didn't do anything. Now, to actually delete that recipe, you'll see how easy this is. Now, again, will put the caveat of, if you really are doing this in a real web application, you would validate the form and all kinds of stuff. I'm just showing you how data works. So if I was going to delete this, if you go into recipe model, you have a delete from database. So you just need to get the instance and then call this method and it will delete it. So to get the instance, which we've already done right here, just copy that. And then we will go back here and I'll copy this and we'll have recipe dot delete from database. And that is all we need. And pizza is about to say goodbye. So if I click here, boom. Oh no. Let's see. Continue. Let's see. Null constraint. We need, it had a comment, and when you deleted it, it needed to, we can't have a null recipe, a null recipe ID on the comment table. So let's go back and see what happened in here. So recipe, okay, and let's see, do I still have pizza? Yes, I do. So if I go to comment, it has a, let's look at the data under comment. So these comments are on recipe 2 or recipe 1. There's no comment on recipe 2. And so when I tried to delete it, it would have, we didn't do like a cascade on delete, which we should have. So let me go to my model, and for comment is what I need, right? So let's do this. Let's come in here, and I haven't, so we're in Cooker. We don't need my project. Let's come in here and let's go to the model for, and the comment, and then we will, when you delete a recipe, what we want is a cascade here. And you're going to say all delete orphan. Okay, so what that should do is, now it should, when I try to delete, it should delete the comment. And good, we got a new error. And it's probably one or more mappings. Probably the comments have images, which my guess is they need to have the same thing. So comment, let's go to image. So we'll put the same thing here. Cascade equals all delete orphan. Okay. Let's see if it's, I've probably got myself in a pickle here. So let's see what happens. Let's get rid of this here. And is it just completely yelling? It's like, hey, you messed me up. Okay. Okay. One or more mappings failed to initialize, cannot proceed with initialization of other map, trigger, comment, comments, one-to-many relationship, comment, recipe. Many, and not on the many side of the one-to-many or many-to-many. Okay. It's telling you to do the single parent, but I don't normally do that. So let me actually, I put it on the wrong place. I need it, and my apologies for that. I need it on the other side of this. So let's go to comment on the images. And I did this in the wrong place too. My apologies. So on, let's see, on recipe, on the comments. Okay, I should have put it here. All right, let's see if that solved it. Yes. So my apologies, I put it on the wrong side. So if you're in a recipe, and you have comments, and you delete a recipe, you want to delete all the comments related to that recipe, then you would do your cascade here on comments in recipe, not on recipe and comments, which is what I did originally. And then I just did the same thing. I made the same mistake twice. So there's recipe, there's comments. So on the comment, on the images, you're going to need that same cascade delete all instead of doing it where I did it. All right, so I got it out of images, right? Yes, I did. Excellent. Okay, so now, let's go back. We're about to delete a whole bunch of stuff because when we delete recipe, you're going to delete all the comments related to that recipe and all the images. And boom, that worked. Let's just see what happened in the database. If I refresh, no comments and no images. And then there's the recipe. It's just the one recipe. And because we're having fun with delete, let's do this. No recipes yet. All right. So, good. Where are we at? This is maybe a good stopping spot for me to pause and then to come back. Let's go to VS Code. So let's go back here. So we were looking at the show page, and so we were showing some things. Let's go back to creating a recipe. So I'll pause here and I will leave this as big screen. So I'll pause here, and then future me will come back and teach you how to create a recipe. So see you in just a second for you, probably a day for me. All right, it's future me back, ready to create some recipes. So let's build out the create page. Here, I'm on the create page. Let's go to VS Code, see what we have pulled up here. So this is our cooker. Oh, that was probably pretty good. Let's go into app. We're in the controller. I believe we brought over under test kitchen recipe. In the create, we brought over all the users that are authors. So thinking that a user could be an author, or a user could just be a general user where they view the things, the recipes. So let's go to templates now, test kitchen, recipes, and the create page. So the shortest path is rarely the clearest. Let's make sure that's that one. Let's just put hello world here and make sure that our hot reloading is doing as we think. It sure is. Excellent. Let's split the screen. All right. So, let's lay this out. So I think I'm gonna have, if I go back to my other pages, it's always helpful to see them here. Let's bring this over. Let's see the show page. So here on the show page, I have a H1 at the top that says test kitchen. Let's copy that and bring it over to the edit page. All right, so what do we have here? We have, I think we should say test kitchen recipe, and then that's the edit I want, not edit. Let's look at create. Okay, I want to create a recipe. So I may not actually have a link here because I don't have any recipe. So test kitchen recipes, let's do create. All right, so that gives me my H1. It's huge. Let's bump it down. There we go. And then we were doing kind of a nav bar in here, somewhat of a nav bar. So we'll just kind of copy this, go back over to the create, paste that in. I think if I was on the create, I would want to go back to all the test kitchen recipes, and that does exactly that. Perfect. So now I can go test kitchen recipes, new recipe, test kitchen recipes, new recipe. Excellent. Let's make a form here. So we'll do a H2 and we'll call it the create recipe form. All right, now that's a form tag. So a form tag has a method, and the method is going to be post, and it has an action. And the action is going to go to URL for, and we have RESTful actions here. So we are going to test kitchen dot recipes dot store. All right. So what is a recipe? That's the question. What is a recipe? A recipe has a title and an author ID. The created at and updated at are going to be populated by default, and so is the ID. So, and right now I've deleted all the recipes, right? We kind of had fun with the delete button a few seconds ago, or a few minutes ago. So we want a title. So I'm going to have an input that is type is text, and its name is going to be title, and then I'm going to have a select because I have all the authors, so I'm going to have a select that is name is equal to author ID. All right. And then that select, we need options. So the option is going to have a value, and the value is going to be user.id. And the display part of this is going to be user.username. Now we don't have user, we have users. If you go back to the controller it's users that got passed in, which is all the users that have author is author set to true. So we'll do this for user in users. We will iterate over them and then end the for. All right. Now, this is just going to give us the basics, and that's somewhat okay. I've got two. You probably caught that. But it is nice to have a label. And so let's put a label. Now, I'm not trying to win any beauty pageant here with this website. So this is for the title. And in order to hook this up so that when you click on the label, it makes the cursor populate in the field, you need an ID here. So this is title. And they need the ID and the for need to be the same. So this is title. All right, so title. This name is what's coming across when we post the form, and we'll need a button to post the form. So a submit button, type submit. So a button down here, and the type is going to be submit, and then we'll call it create recipe. All right, and then let's put a label on this one. There it is. And the label is for author ID. We'll just say author. And then here in the select, we will put an ID of author ID. Okay, and then just to give it, if I do this, it's probably going to look like a little bit of a jumbled mess. And sure enough, it's nice though. I do see the names populating, Drew and Sue, and those were the names that we set one to author to in the users table. So Drew has one, Sue has one. If I make Sam one also and save that, then you should end up, when you refresh, see Drew, Sam, and Sue. Okay, let's turn Sam back off just so we have one that's not, and you can see that. Right, that is not a live reload. You're still going to see Drew, Sam, and Sue until I refresh the page, and I'm using Command R to refresh the page. That's why you didn't see me press that button. Okay, what I would normally do is kind of put these in some kind of group, so it's hard for me not to do that. So just bear with me here. Even though I'm not styling this, at the very minimum, I'll at least put some decent HTML structure in it. Okay, so there's our form. So create recipe form, we give it a title, we have an author, and then we do a create recipe. And you may even come up here and like put like a select user option that's default value is like kind of grayed out or something like that. I'm not going to try to win a beauty pageant with this, so I'm just going to leave this as is, because our main objective here is to actually see the flow happen. Now, when I do this, it's going to go to store, and store right now just prints the request.form. I wanted you all to see request.form, so it's not like, well, how does he know all this stuff? It just kind of comes. Now, when it prints, what it will do is it'll print right here. So when we hit the submit, you're gonna see this page populate with the form data. And let's do it. So let's bring back pizza. All right, create the recipe. And there it is. It's an immutable dictionary. The title there is pizza, and the author ID is 1. Notice pizza is a string, 1 is a string, so they're both coming across as strings. And just so you can see, let's go back to VS Code. If I come in, it's always fun to kind of play with these things. So let's change this to the title and the title, and then come back and submit it. And what you're going to end up with is, and notice we redirected to the index page, which is good because when we actually create them, nothing got stored in the database because we have to write that code. So if I go back to Table Plus and I look at my recipes, I still have no recipes. Okay, and that's as expected. So if I come back, new recipe, put in pizza again, hit create, you're going to see the title. So just so you know where things are lining up, and it's if I click on title, see how it selects because of that, the way that we've set up the HTML, it's selecting the input box there, or the options. So let's go back to title, and if I change this to the title up here, then I'm not going to end up having that nice, you have to have the for and the ID be the same. So when the for and the ID are the same, then when you select the label, it goes to the input box. I just wanted to bring that point home because I often saw developers do it like this: for, ID, and name all the same, and it's like, well, why? But the name is what's coming across in your form, and then so you end up with an immutable dictionary on the other side, and then the for and the ID need to be the same so that when you click on the label, it goes into the input box. All right, but we're just have all of them the same. A lot of times you just see that, so I'll just kind of stick with that convention. All right, so what we need to do now is we need to go back to the controller, and we need to store these things in a new recipe. And let's try it out. So I'm going to put in pizza, and I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to create it. And here is what I end up with, this immutable dictionary. And so it has a key of title and has a key of author ID, and then these are the values for those keys. So you can use this nice get, and that's what we're going to do. So you can do it in a couple ways. So let's go to our controller, and let's print, okay, this, oops, I want to repeat it. Okay, so let's do you can actually get title, and you could do author ID. Let's see how that works. And it says I have the wrong notation around author ID. I do really like the debug feature in Flask. With the hot reloading, and then as I'm typing, the debug tells me exactly what I just did wrong, and I can fix it right there. Especially if I have two screens going on. Okay, so now I just want you to see that we're going to get these values out. So we'll put in pizza again. All right, so we got pizza and 1. Let's see if we can get the user for the 1. So that would be a query. So we're going to say user equals user dot query dot filter, or you can actually do get, and you would probably do like a get or 404 here, and then let's put this in. Now we may have a little bit of trouble depending on if we have a string here or not. So let's just see what happens, and then we can do a print of the user. All right, so we'll come back here, and we'll refresh this, bring this up, do new recipe, pizza, and hey, sure enough, we got Drew. If for some reason that was giving you a problem, in my notes, I had another way of grabbing these using the get. And let me just show you that just in case. So instead of doing it this way, you can also use the .get. It's like you're grabbing this thing off of this array, and then you do it like that, and then that way it comes back null if that ID doesn't exist, instead of like erroring out. And then another thing you can do is you can say it defaults to type string. You can make the type equal to an int, and then if you have this, we will do it like this. User ID is equal to, and then it's probably good to say title is equal to that. All right, and then down here I can just use user ID, and I probably will end up with exactly the same thing. Let's just check it out. All right, so first that, get that, pizza, and sure enough, I end up with the same thing. This one is a little bit safer than this one. So I would recommend using the get. So you can use it here too. And in this case, it defaults it to a string, so we'll just keep the type string. Now, that gets me my user. So what we need to do is we need to build a recipe. So let's make a recipe. All right. So I got my user, I have my title, and now I'll build my recipe. So recipe is equal to recipe, and then you're using the class recipe, and you can just put in the title, which is going to be title, and then the author ID is, you can do it just exactly this way. You can actually just say author equals user. And because of the relational mapping, it will know to put the right author in the right place. And then, now that's going to keep it in memory. So then you need to do this, recipe.store in database. And that is a method on the recipe model that came shipped with store in database with the creation of the model. Okay, so let's save this. My ID is yelling, so we'll see if it just doesn't know what it doesn't know. We will, actually we don't need that. We'll just go and create it and see, we should see the recipe pop in right here. So let's go back to pizza and whether it yells at us or not. There we go. All right. So I would probably clean this up a little bit. I would probably just go ahead and do this here. And then I would keep this, but I would probably do all this in one line personally. And if you're at a good spot. This is my PEP 8 and I guess vertical line scenario where we don't go over that line length. So I would do something like that, and then I would probably keep this just like this. All right, so that's store. And so that's good. So we can now create pizza and, I don't know, salad. And let's do the other user. Okay, so we've got 2 recipes. Now, if we go in here, we have an edit button. So let's work on the edit page. We know the delete works, so I can delete it and then come back here and make a new one. And I might have sudo both, say. Okay, so Sue is now the author of salad and pizza. So let's go to salad. And I think since we deleted that, if we go back in our table plus and look at recipes, 1 got deleted. And so it's kind of the next one when we made it again came down as 3. So you lost that ID 1 now. All right, let's look at the edit page. The edit page is still our template, so we'll come over. Now, on the edit page, we're going to need to bring in the users so that we can list all the users. To maybe Sue no longer authors something, maybe now we'll put back Drew. And we'll also need to bring over the recipe so we can see the values here. So let's go into the controller. In the edit, we have nothing. So we're going to do recipe is equal to recipe dot query dot get or 404. And then recipe ID. And we can actually show you this 404. We put it in there and you're like, well, you never use it, but we do. And you'll see it here in just a second. And then users is going to be exactly the same thing that I had here. So let's just copy it. And then we'll pass in the recipe. I like breaking it here. And then we'll pass in the recipe, and the user is users. All right. So now we have access to recipe and users in our edit page. So we need to go to edit, and I don't have edit up. I have these 3. So we have the show page, we have the index page, we have the create page, and now we're going to work on the edit page. And just to make sure we are on the right page, we will put hello world, save that, and sure enough, there's our hello world. Excellent. All right, let's bring that back. All right, and then we will do the update, and then that will be the full CRUD. will almost be done here. So let me go back. Let me look at my edit page notes. So what are we going to edit? Well, we already have the recipe. So let me go to let's go to my show page, because edit's kind of like show in the title, except for, so this would be the show page. Let's tell you that you're editing. And then what are you editing? Recipe title, that makes sense. But when you click that, probably should go to the show page. And that's going to the show page of the public side. I would think it would go to the show page of Test Kitchen, which we're thinking of kind of being selected users or can access this. Test Kitchen, recipes, show. And that would be get me back to the edit page. So if I come here, then I can click the edit. So now I can go to both. Okay. Now, I am going to put a package out, Flask Flare, that will style this really great. And then these things will start actually looking nice. For now, we're just getting the data structures. And we're getting some links on the page so that we can traverse through this. Let's copy this. All right, so where should we go? How about you can navigate back to all the recipes for Test Kitchen. So Test Kitchen recipes, which would be the index page, not for recipe, but for Test Kitchen recipes index page. So if I go here, then now I'm seeing all the Test Kitchen recipes, and then I can go into a recipe and I can click the edit. So you can go 2 levels back now. All right, and then so that takes care of that. So let's do an H2, which is what we came here for. Let's edit recipe form. Let's make an edit recipe form. So we need a form, and the method is going to be post. And then the action. So when you edit one, your action is the update. So it is URL for, and these are just conventions, naming conventions. So test kitchen dot recipes dot update, and then you need to tell it the ID of the thing that you are updating. So recipe ID is recipe dot ID. All right, and then we'll end our form. And didn't like that. Why is it yelling? Probably because I haven't closed this. Okay. All right, so now I've got 2 form ends, so we'll delete that one. All right, we need a button, a submit button. Type is submit, and it's going to say update the recipe. There we go. So there's our update recipe form, and it should post to here. Let's go back here. It should post to the update. We can do a quick print and say I'm in the update. And then that should redirect back to the index page. So if I come over here and I clear this and I click update, there it did. It ran that. I'm in the update, and it went back to the index page, so I can see all these. So we can go back here and back to the edit. All right, so all of that's wired up, and I mean, for me, that's really great because I can, as you're seeing, I am able to just focus on the actual app and fleshing out the things that I need for this app instead of having to say, okay, did I wire this up correctly, these routes correctly? That's a big headache. That was always been a big headache of mine. Let's go back here to the edit page. And we need to put in the label and the user, and I already have it in the create. And oftentimes I make the create and the edit like the same page. I'm not going to do that in this video, but I will put together other series later, and I'll show you once I get all my packages made, fully fleshed out apps where I do that. Okay, so we need the title. We already have that set up, but here's the great thing. Now we can actually put value in. And the value is going to be recipe.title. If I don't do this, you're just going to see two forms. And you're not going to know that, like, who it was. And remember, it's not Drew who did this. It was Sue who did this. And the reason you're not seeing that, and it was salad, right? So if I put the value in, then you automatically see that. For the select, do you do it here? Okay. We do it here. It's a little different for the select. So you're going to have an if condition. If recipe, so we have a recipe dot author ID equals the user that we're on in the loop dot ID. If that's equal, then I'm going to put this word here in the tag selected. And then I'm going to end the if. All right, and that should populate Sue. And sure enough, it did. Excellent. So now I can come back and I can change the Sue to Drew. And now Drew is the author of salad, and maybe we'll have fruit salad. So if you're, but it says Sue salad, not Drew's fruit salad. If you're a Wiggles fan, you're probably singing a song in your head right now. And the reason that it says it didn't change is because we haven't done anything in the code to make that happen. So let's go back to the controller and update the update. Update the update. So let's go back here. Right now I'm just saying I'm in the update, so you should see that a couple times in your terminal here. I'm in the update, but that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is essentially this. So we will, and I mentioned that we're going to show this 404. We're going to do the 404 thing again. So we're going to get the recipe, and it is gotten by recipe.query.get or 404 recipe ID. Okay, and then we are going to change the, we have a way of getting the title, which is here, and we have a way of setting the author. So we can say recipe dot title is equal to that, then recipe dot author is equal to, Now, it's probably safest to find the author from the form. So I would probably do this again. So if this was a real web app, I would be CSRF protection. There would be a lot of different layers of protection. We're doing a little bit of protection here because we're returning 404s in the event that the recipe ID isn't a thing. And this also returns a 404 in the event that the author ID is not an actual thing in our database. So I can show you those too. But once on the happy case, if we have the recipe ID and the user ID, then we can just do this. And if you want to if it makes you feel better to call this author instead of user, by all means, call that author. Okay, and then once you're there, that's great. It's in memory updated, but it's not updated in our database. So you actually have to put recipe.store in database. And that's it. Okay, so let's see if that works. So we'll go here to Sue's salad. We'll edit it. We'll make it fruit salad once again. And we'll change the author. And sure enough, it worked. Great. I said I was going to show you this 404. So when I click on fruit salad, I'm running the edit page. And on the edit page, I look for the recipe from the ID passing the URL. Now, I do not have a recipe 200 or 20 even. And so, see, I end up with the 404. So there you go. If you want to also see it down here with the author ID, let's put in a bad option. So on edit, we can come in and let's just copy this. And we know we only have 3 users. Let's just put a bad user. We'll actually call them bad user. And we'll get rid of this. They won't be selected. And we'll give them an ID of 200. Okay, but we don't have that user. And so there is option bad user, and oops, refreshed. And when I update, I'm going to end up with a 404 error because bad user came through and was not found in the database. And when we did this here on the update, it ran this line of code and it did not find user ID 200, and so it threw a 404 and didn't execute the rest of this code. So we have a little bit of validation. This is by no means enough validation to put an application live, but it at least gets you a starting spot. Okay, so we have a lot. I am going to pause at this point, and future me will see you in just a second and see what else we need to do. All right, so the teacher in me is telling you, give you this option here and see, we did this in Test Kitchen recipe. Why you try this in the next step? And so what I would recommend doing is coming back to terminal. We do not have an ingredients model at all. So let me just double check something. Yeah, I never made ingredients. So if I come here just to see that, if I go to app, model, and then I don't have an ingredient here. So a recipe can have multiple ingredients. And if you wanted the full RESTful actions under ingredient, under the namespace test kitchen, then you can do that with make model. So I'd come back here. We would run another Flask command, and it would be Flask make model. And then I want it under test kitchen, so test kitchen. And then I want the nesting to happen. So I'll start from the parent and work my way down. So recipe ingredient. Okay, and then I want full RESTful actions on that. So CRUD. And then I want it nested. And that's all I need. All right, so that's gonna reload a whole lot of things. Browser's like, what is going on? Give it just a second because you wrote a ton of files. But that gets you ingredients, and then under your controller, cancel this, so you can come back here. Under your controller, what I would recommend, and I will put this in the repository, won't go through it right now, but I would pause the video and see if you can do everything that we did in this controller. See if you can reproduce that same scenario over in this controller. So that would be a good practice for those of you who are, this is a new thing for, and for those of you who are senior at this should take a second for you to do. You know, do it, no AI, see if you can get that accomplished. All right, I am going though to carry on here, and I'm just going to do a little bit more, not much. I'm going to go with our structure, cooking step and tips, and I'm just going to flush out the index and the show page of cooking step, and then the index page of tip, and that's it. And then I'm going to call it good on this and leave you to carry on Cooker to however you want. Feel free to clone the repository and change it in whatever way you want, use it however you want. Okay, so let's go. I'm gonna go on my notes. Bear with me here. I'm gonna go back to Test Kitchen Recipes show page and do a couple cleanup steps. So I want let's minimize this in my app, in my templates, Test Kitchen Recipe show page. All right. And then to see the show page, and one thing I should do, honestly, under the, edit page, let's get rid of bad user before we forget that that's there. That was just for testing purposes. So here's my show page, and I am viewing my show page. Excellent. We have this delete button here. We have that. Let's put a couple things in here. So let's make an unordered list, and I'm going to say the thing that you're going to do here for us, which is ingredients. Be nice when you're on a recipe to know how many ingredients there are. So I would just put recipe dot ingredient, and it's going to yell at me when I do this. Length. Okay. Now, it should yell at me because a recipe does not have an ingredient. We can save it so we can see if it does yell. And it says it's okay. The recipe, though, in the model should have ingredients. And that hasn't been defined yet, so let's define that. It's db.relationship. I'm surprised it did not yell. And then it's going to be the ingredient class, and then backref or backpopulate. Sorry, populates. Let's just copy it here. And it backpopulates is this class, this recipe. And then the foreign key. And then when you delete the recipe, you want the cascade on all that will delete all the ingredients associated to that recipe. So if you don't want that, then you wouldn't put it. So for in keys is equal to, okay, ingredient, and I would think this would yell at me because it shouldn't. In the ingredient, I have not put a recipe ID on it. So recipe ID. And then I would do this. Okay. So let's save that and see if it doesn't yell. Sure enough, it does. It's saying backpopulate recipe. Let's see if this, perhaps you missed a comma. I did, sure enough. Now it should say yes. It doesn't have this mapping, is what I'm hoping that's referencing. So we just need to go into the ingredient and put a recipe ID on it. Just like in comment, we put a recipe ID. We can copy it here, and we can put that on ingredient. See, I'm already helping you with the homework. Okay, we'll need to migrate here because we actually don't even have ingredient in the tables, but we also need a recipe, and we can essentially copy this and put our relationships here. All right, but this is going to be not comment, but ingredients. Okay. So now I think if we were to come over here and activate our virtual environment, so source, then activate, and then do Flask DB migrate -m created ingredients table, and then Flask DB upgrade. Let's see if I get an error. No, I do not. All right, let's see. Yay! I'm very happy that all that worked. All right. So, and that's the way it should be. So we're all good here. And now that 0 makes a little more sense to me. I'm surprised it didn't yell at me. I guess it lets you get away with things if they're null or undefined. Let's go back to the show page, and we will link to this so that when you click on here, you actually see ingredients, and then that should be the index page for that. And sure enough, it's a live one, which was created for us by Flask Commands. So let's just link to that. So that would be an anchor tag here. Oops. And the href. The href is going to be a little bit long because we're somewhat nested here. And we'll do that. So we'll do URL 4. And then we're in test kitchen. So test kitchen dot recipes dot ingredients dot index. And like what was great for me is I just have to think of what the relationships are, and I'm able to type that out without having to go look, okay, what did I call this blueprint? What did I call this other blueprint? So the naming just works out. Recipe needs a recipe ID, and I have that. I have recipe. Okay. And that's all I need, because you're going to go to the ingredients and you're going to list all of them. So you don't need an ingredient ID. That would be if you use show. Okay, so now when I save that, becomes a link, and there we go. Let's make this a little bit. You see there's that ingredient. So that gives you a path for you to kind of carry on, and you can flush out the index page, and you can flush out the show page, and just all the things that we did for recipe, you should be able to do those same steps for recipe ingredients. So, and it's just ingredients, but nested under recipe. All right, so let's take this, oops, and let's go like that. Okay, let's do a CookStep. Because I don't know about you, but when I see a recipe, my first question is, how many steps are there? So CookSteps, so recipe.cooksteps, and then that'll be the length. And then we would just come in here and put in CookSteps. And that'll be the index page. And then we'll do another one. Okay. And this will be comments. Do I have comments? I do have comments. And how are comments related to recipe? Should be recipe comment. And then you have recipe comment images. So, but that is not under Test Kitchen. So I'm going to remove this. I'm just going to do recipes, comments, and then I'm going to put comments. All right, now the CookStep is here, and comments. Okay, and so we have an error. Did you forget to specify the value of recipe ID? Quite possible. It's yelling about ingredients, and I thought we put a recipe ID on ingredient. So let's come down here to this model ingredient. We did. So why are you yelling? Ingredients index. Did you forget the, oh, in the URL when you're building out the URL. So let's go to, let's see, we are at the show page for recipe. And when I did this, I did not, and I need to do it everywhere, don't I? So let's do this multi-cursor. We need recipe ID is equal to recipe dot ID. Yay. Okay. And we have no CookSteps, we have no comments, and we have no ingredients. If we start populating the database with just stuff, so here, what are we on? I think we're on, are we on pizza or are we on salad? I'm on the fruit salad by Drew. So let's come over here. So here is fruit salad by Drew. Its ID is 2. So if I go in and I make a comment on recipe 2, and then this is the author, we'll just put 1, and then a message. This is amazing. Okay, and we'll save that. Then what we'll see when we come here and we refresh the page is now we have 1 comment. So you could see it working here. This author is Drew. So Drew commented on his own recipe. That would be about right. And then we'll do another one, recipe 2, and then author 2. I love this recipe. Okay. And then we'll save that. And so now when we come back and we go and we refresh, we have 2 comments. And you can do the same thing with CookSteps and ingredients. Let's flush out CookStep later. And you're only allowed 2 tabs, and that's the thing that happens to me when you're using the free version. So let's go to CookStep. Right now, CookStep doesn't have much of anything in it. Let's see what I was planning on doing for CookStep as far as the model goes. All right, so let's flush out CookStep. Let's flush out the data structure, and then we'll make a migration. So we'll come in here. Let's close all these. Let's go ahead and close everything. Oftentimes, this is what happens to me, where I've done a whole bunch of things. I'm kind of in one area, and I need to just refresh and get everything closed back up. So I'm going to go to App, Model, CookStep, and I have nothing set up. And I need to set up my relationships, and I need to add some columns. So relationships. Okay, it comes from a recipe. A CookStep comes from a recipe, so we're gonna have recipe here, right? And we'll just put DB relationship there for right now. And then a CookStep can have several tips, so we'll put tips DB relationship. So you'll see both scenarios, the backwards from the one to many, and then the forwards from the one to many. And we're going to, it's related to a recipe, so you need recipe ID in here. And then we'll do DB column. And you also need some things about it. So I would do like a sequence on CookStep, just so you can say this is the first CookStep, this is the second one for this recipe. So I would do a sequence. If I I was doing this. So that would be a db column, and then it would be just an integer. And I would not let it be nullable. All right. I would have some kind of title, like this is CookStep 1 and preparation or something like that, and then I would have a description. Okay, so these are going to be very similar, so we'll multi-cursor this. These are going to be db column, and then it's going to be a string. And I'm going to put, I always just do powers of 2. That's what I've always seen done. So, well, not always seen done. I've seen all kinds of stuff done. But I'm just stick with powers of 2, probably because I'm a mathematician at heart. Nullable, and I'm going to say that's false. Okay, so I'm letting the title be up to 256 characters and the description be 1024. Feel free to update those as you see fit. Now, I do need to come back in and I need to make this an integer. And it's a foreign key. Spell that right. Key. And it's a foreign key on the table recipes.id. So that's telling table plus what table and what column this recipe ID is a foreign key for. And nullable is going to be false. You have to have this. Otherwise, you would just have this floating CookStep related to no recipe, and that makes no sense. So then we're going to need on recipe, we're going to need, and I'll come back and fill these out, but we're going to need CookSteps. And we don't have that. So essentially, we can copy this and change it to CookSteps. And then that is going to reference CookStep. And back populates to recipe. And then the foreign key is CookStep dot recipe ID, which we just, and when you delete a recipe, we're going to delete all the CookSteps associated to that recipe. So that's the cascade on delete. Okay, so we'll keep that. And we will come back here and we'll set up the recipe here, relationship on CookStep. So if you're on CookStep, you can do dot recipe and it'll get you back to your recipe. And back populate. CookSteps. So if you're on recipe, you need to go backwards or forwards, then it's CookSteps. So all these things should just kind of line up. It always did seem a little bit redundant to me. And then this is tip, and okay, so if you are on a CookStep, you can say, give me all the tips. Once you have a tip, you want to back populate to CookStep. Back populate to a CookStep. And if you delete a CookStep, you should delete all the tips associated to that CookStep. So Cascade all delete or okay. So as long as we didn't spell anything wrong, we should be good. Now let's go to tip while we're here and just flush that out. So it's going to need a CookStep ID. I would just put like a description, and then the relationship will be the CookStep, the backwards to this. And then that's the end of our models. So CookStep ID is going to be a DB column, and it's DB integer, DB foreign key, and it goes back to the CookStep table, which is CookSteps, and the ID value on that table. And I'm not going to let it be nullable. All right, so that takes care of that. Now we do need to add something in here that defines what a CookStep is, which is probably a description. And that's going to be DB column, and then DB string 1024, let's say nullable false. Otherwise there's no reason to put a CookStep in, or a tip in, sorry. And then relationships. All right, so when we're on a tip, we should be able to go back to the CookStep for that tip. And so that'll be DB relationship CookStep, and back populates is, so you're going from a tip back to CookStep, and so if you go back to CookStep and you want to go the other direction, the backwards of the backwards, it would go back to tips. All right. Okay, so all of that should work. That was a lot of changes. I would just put in the comments something about the updated. So I would do something like this. Updated instead of created. And I would just say CookSteps and CookSteps table, and maybe a tips table. Okay. And then fingers crossed that we don't have an error. We do. I will figure this error out, and future Drew will explain what we were missing. All right, see you in just a second. All right, so it was a similar problem that I had from before, where the name didn't have, when the migration was created, it just gave a none for the foreign key constraint name. And I've already pulled up the migration. So if you, let's come back and show you that, and then chat over here, show off, figured it out in 15 seconds. So under migration, under version, we just created a new one called updated CookSteps table and tips table. And that's what I've pulled up here. And my IDE is actually yelling about this. It's missing the name here, and then when you drop it. Now, there's kind of a systematic way of naming these, so I'm a little bit surprised it doesn't name this for me. It would be foreign key, and then this is CookStep, so it's going to say CookSteps, and then recipe ID is what we're, recipe ID, and then recipes apparently is what chat is recommending. Now, there's not necessarily a right or wrong scenario here. It's just, you just need to give it a name. Foreign key, and then tips, and then this is tips because that was that, and then it's on the CookStep ID. So CookStep ID, and then CookSteps maybe, because this put recipes here at the very end. So we'll do CookSteps. It just said it did say CookSteps. Okay, so if I copy that, just make sure yep, and then copy this one, make sure I didn't spell anything wrong. All right, perfect. And then if you're dropping things in the downgrade, you should do the same thing. The top one, this is for tips, so I would imagine it put the tips one in first. Sure enough, it did. And then this one is for CookSteps, so it should put the CookSteps one in. All right. So now, fingers crossed, we'll come back here, run this again, and yes. All right. Good. So we have updated our database. So things should have more columns, and sure enough they do. There's the CookSteps, there's the tips. And if you want to move, I like moving things around, and I always like my IDs first, and then the create it and update it at last. So I would do it like this: sequence, title, and then description. All right. So that'll stay. And yeah, I'm going to pause now, and future Drew, probably tomorrow, future Drew, and a second for you will come back, and we will finish out those index pages for the CookStep, the show page for CookStep, and the index page for tip. All right. I will see you in just a second. Or you will see me in a second, and I will see you in a day. All right, I'm back, and hopefully it was a split second for you. I noticed that we have a little bit of a problem, and this is one of the many reasons I just love Flask. So if I come to the browser, I have a nasty error yelling at me, and it's kind of funny. You all may have seen it. It looks like name CookStep is not defined, and sure enough, we do not have a CookStep. We have a CookStep. So we'll come over to VS Code, and we will do a find all. So for me, that's Command Shift F, and then CookStep. And there it is in my model as my foreign key. So it should be CookStep, not CookStep. We'll save that, go back to the browser, and everything's back up and running. Now, it looks like I have pretty much where I want to be. There's only a few pages I was going to work through and just show you some things in Jinja 2. So let's close chat over here, and we'll close that. Let's see, this is, so as far as data structures go, I think we're good here. That's our migration, we're good there. All the data structures. Okay, let's go back to our file system. Let's open up our templates. So under app, templates, okay. Here we're in Test Kitchen, Recipe. I'm looking at Test Kitchen Recipe 2, which is the show page, and this looks pretty good to me. Let's go in. I left cook ingredients. I'm going to leave that for you all. Let's look at, so this is fruit salad. Let's say we need CookSteps. So we'll go in here to CookSteps. Good, it does look like we have it all wired up. So this should be the index page for CookSteps. So let's go to CookSteps index page. We'll flush out the index page, the show page, and then we'll go into tips and we'll flush out the index page, and I'm going to call it good at that point. So let's put a few CookSteps in for our fruit salad. So we'll come back to Table Plus just so we can see something. So right now I have no CookSteps at all. Let's go into our recipes, and fruit salad is recipe ID 2. So for CookStep, I want recipe ID 2, and we'll make sequence 1, and we'll maybe say start. The start here. The start. And then get your groceries. Maybe get your groceries, and then I'm just gonna make up something really basic here. Let's put things out of order. Let's say you start by getting your groceries, and then you cut your lettuce, and then you put everything together. So we'll put things a little bit out of order just so you can see how we can get them back in order. So the end. So I'll have the start, the middle, and the end, and then we'll say put everything together, and then here, so we'll have 2, and then 2 is my sequence, and then the middle, and then cut all the salad items. Okay, save that. So at least we have something here. Now if I go back to here, and if I go back a page, I should now, let's see, have 3 CookSteps. Good, I do. So there's the 3 CookSteps. So now we should actually see those 3 CookSteps. So let's get my notes ready. Okay. So we will come back to VS Code, And I'm gonna get the index page that we had before. That way we have some kind of reference. Maybe the show page too. All right. So we're in Test Kitchen. We want there. Oh, I lost my index page for CookSteps. So there's CookSteps index page. There's CookSteps index page. And let's kind of mock it off of this. So we'll have this. Actually, let's grab this one. We'll have this header. And this will be the recipe CookSteps. And if you're in, we'll put recipe title here, but if you're in CookSteps, you will probably want to be able to go back to the recipes show page, but for the test kitchen, not for recipes. So we'll say test kitchen recipes show page needs a recipe ID. Let's see if that works for us. I'll let that load. It's going a little bit slow. And while that loads, let's says I do not have a recipe. And that's probably because we have not flushed out the controller. So let's go to the controller and send this recipe through. So let's go back, go to the controller, test kitchen recipe CookStep controller. Sure enough, we have not done that. So on the index page, we are going to get the recipe. Get or 404 recipe ID. Okay, and then I need to bring that in from my model, fix that, and then send that through. All right, that should fix this. Sure enough, that sped things up quite a bit. Okay, so then now we're here on our index page. And then we'll put in our kind of fake nav bar, and this will take us back. Probably want to go back all the way to test kitchen recipes. And is that what we have here? What's in our show bar? Test kitchen recipes. Yeah, let's just go ahead and take that, and we will put it in our index page here. And this way, we can go back to fruit salad, and then traverse to CookStep, or we can go all the way back and then go fruit salad and then CookStep. All right, good. So now what I'd like to do is, you're on Test Kitchen, so just like the index page for recipe, you're probably going to have some kind of new thing here. So this would get us, new CookStep. And that will be test kitchen recipes CookStep dot create, and then you would need the recipe ID. Recipe ID equals recipe.id. All right, let's see if we get a little link here. Did you mean? Looks like I have a typo. CookSteps. Correct, I sure did. Thank you. Werkzeug. Okay, so now if I go here, I should, the URL, watch the URL when I click there, you should go to the create. Sure enough, you do. Excellent. I'm not going to flesh this out. I'll just leave the rest of this as an exercise. I don't want this video to take, forever. All right, so let's see, and this is one of the main things I wanted to show you all. Let's say we have an ordered list instead of an unordered list. And so we are going to iterate over. So let's go, oops, wrong symbol. For CookSteps in, okay, we need the CookSteps. So you can do recipe dot CookSteps. Okay. Let's just do that right now. And 4. Okay. So then if I come in, I'm going to have a list item, and I'm just going to put, now the CookStep has a title and a description. So here, I'll just start off with the title. So something like CookStep, I put an S here, I should just say for CookStep in recipe.cooksteps, CookStep.title. Okay, so I should see the start, the end, the middle, and we have 1, 2, 3, and that's because I did that on purpose because the order that we have is we put them in this odd order, but they have a sequence. Didn't I put a sequence on here? Sequence 1, 3, 2, and if you look, you can actually put that in here if you want. You can just go dot CookStep sequence, and you should see 1, 2, 3. That's what you want them in. So Verkzoid has, or not Verkzoid, Jinja 2 has this nice way to sort. So you pipe here, and then you say sort, and then you tell it what to sort on. So we're sorting on the attribute, I missed an I. Put a U there, excuse me, is equal to sequence. Okay, and that should put it in the right order. Start, middle, end, 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Okay, we don't necessarily need that because we put it there from the list item. But if you wanted it, you can put it there at the beginning. So let's make this a little bit more. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna really flush this out. And then if there are no CookSteps, and we have an example like that, what you can do is you can do this else. And then you can say list item, no CookSteps yet. And then we'll show the example of that here just in a minute. Let me not forget. So I'm going to put a div in here, and I am going to make this kind of bold. So I'll make this strong, which makes things bold. Oops. All right. And I would like this thing to be a link. Like it should go to the show page for that CookStep, and we'll flush that out. So we'll make this an anchor tag, function href is equal to, and then we will push this over here. So see if you can do this. If you're following along, I would pause video here. See if you can write this anchor tag to the show page for CookStep. All right, I'll pause for a second. All right, good. Let's see if you got it. URL 4, and then we want test kitchen dot recipes dot CookStep, and it's steps dot show. And then we will put, we don't need a test kitchen ID because that's a namespace. We need a recipes ID, and since we're on the show page, we need a CookStep ID. So recipe ID is recipe.id, and then CookStep ID is CookStep.id. We have all those things. And so I should just be able to save that, and these should become hyperlinks. Let's check it out. And sure enough, CookStep 1 here. And then if I go to the middle, it's going to be CookStep, and the ID is 3 on it, even though it was the middle one. And then that's 2. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So, I mean, in the real world, when you have these things, they may end up getting out of order. You may end up rewriting your recipe multiple times. I could see somebody wanting a little edit button here. So I would do that. Maybe simply like this with an edit. And then you would have this little edit button here. And so let's just make that a link. Href. All right. And I would pause video here. We want to write the edit for the CookStep that we're on. So you pause, write your URL for, see if you get it, and then I'll show you. All right. So let's see what we have here. So URL 4, and then we are in Test Kitchen. You can pretty much copy just this right here. Test Kitchen, recipe, CookSteps, and then edit. Now, you don't need a Test Kitchen ID, you need a recipe ID, and you're going to need the CookStep ID. So you can pretty much just copy this right here. And we'll paste it. All right, so let's see if that takes us where we want to go. So it should be the ID after the CookStep and then /edit. Sure enough, it is. Excellent. So I'm not gonna flush those out. We'll just put them there. I would say if you're here, you probably want to see the description. So I would just put like a little paragraph tag here, and I would say, show me the CookStep.description. Let's see what it looks like. Get your groceries, cut all your salad items, put everything together. There we go. And then maybe knowing like that there's a tip related to this. So another unordered list, I would say. And then we'll do list items. And we'll just say, we'll do that count thing. So we'll say tips, and that should be in an anchor tag. So you can get to there. Anchor tag with an href. Okay, and we'll put tips. And then over here, it would be nice to know how many tips. So put some number here. So it looks like that. So I'll let you flesh this out. So pause the video and then see if you can get to the index page here for tips. So that would show you a list of all those tips for this CookStep. And we'll flesh that page out too. And then see if you can get the number of tips for that CookStep. So let's say you pause now, and then I'll give you the answer. All right, so for CookStep's index page, and we can just probably copy any of these, so we don't have to type as much. We'll just paste that in here. Now we want test kitchen, recipe, CookSteps, and then we want tips.index. And we will need we don't need a test kitchen ID, but we'll need a recipe ID and a CookStep ID. We don't need a tips ID because we're seeing all the tips, so the index page. So that should actually work. And let's see what URL we end up with. So we end up with CookStep ID tips. That's exactly what we wanted. So that is the index page for tips. And then to get the count, it's not too bad. You just do CookStep, which is what we have, dot tips, and then slash length. And this is this pipe. I said slash, but pipe length. And that should just get you a count of how many tips there are. We'll go in and we'll put some tips in. So that pretty much flushes out the index page here. I said I'd go and show you this one, and we should be able to get back to recipe, go to the pizza, and if we go to CookStep, we have no CookSteps yet. So that gets us back. All right, so we'll go back to fruit salad, go to our CookSteps. I mean, and you're seeing, but it's been, I'm gonna guess, a little more than 2 hours at this point of full video, and we have flushed out quite a bit of an app. Now it looks just horrible, but the beautifying it up is not too bad if you know a little bit of Tailwind. You can put like little cards and things and make the headers look nice and give some nav bars, and it would look like you had a fully functioning app at this point. You've seen the CRUD on being able to make a recipe, so we would just repeat that same process for making a CookStep. Let's though go in and on the start, let's do CookStep for the middle, cut all the items. So I don't know what a CookStep is. Not a baker myself, but let's go in. For the middle, we're gonna need a CookStep ID, which is gonna be 3. So even though it's the middle one, because we put these out of order. So for the tip, we'll need a CookStep ID, which I'll put 3 in, and we'll make 2 of these, and then a description. So this can be hard. You have this. Okay, so some encouraging words in the CookSteps. All right, we'll save that, and then we'll go back to our browser. Now, let's go back to CookStep. Now, it says 0, and that's because I hit the back button. If I refresh, the middle should say 2. And sure enough, it does. And the other ones say say 0. All right. So before I go into tip, let's go and flush out the show page for a CookStep. So, and it'll be a lot similar to what we currently have. Maybe we're just with like, I don't know, we already have an edit button, so it might just have some more information on it. But definitely link back to all the CookSteps. So let's go to VS Code. So I'll be real quick. And let's get this show page. And at this point, hopefully you start kind of using this. So you want the show page for test kitchen, recipe, CookStep. And that's this one right here. Okay, just to make sure that we didn't get something off, because I only had so many quotes that I used when I made these things, so we can just put like a hello world in here and make sure, there we go. Okay, good. So we'll put our H1 up there from pretty much everything that we have. All right. And this should be the recipe title. And it should say test kitchen recipe. And then maybe what I'll do is I'll bring down CookStep as an H2. And we'll just put CookStep title. CookStep dot title. Now, I've got a recipe, I've got CookStep that I'm working with, so we'll probably want to bring all those over. Right now, if I save this, and should get an error because the controller does not have a recipe and it does not have a CookStep. So let's go back to the controller, and we are in the controller for test kitchen recipe CookStep controller, and this is the show page here. So here's what I would do. You have to be a little careful here. So I would get CookStep. I would get CookStep first, and then from CookStep I would get the recipe, and I would say recipe, here's what I mean by from the CookStep, recipe dot or CookStep dot recipe. And the reason I would do that is if somebody does something odd where they send you a recipe ID, a CookStep ID for one thing, but the recipe ID is not matching that CookStep, then you don't want to have this weird mix match. So we are going to do CookStep dot query dot filter, and I'm going to say, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say the CookStep ID is equal to CookStep ID, and the CookStep dot recipe ID is equal to recipe double equals recipe ID, and then we'll do first or 404, and that should get us. Now we need to import CookStep. Okay, so that should get us what we want. Now let's see if I have an undefined. Okay, still that. Okay, so we're gonna send over recipe. So Let's break this down. Is recipe and CookStep is CookStep. All right, so we're sending those over. I feel good. We got fruit salad. There's the middle, so we know we got the right CookStep. We have the right recipe corresponding to that CookStep. Here's what I'm trying to say. Like, if instead of doing it this way, you did it like this. And it's very tempting to do it like this. I probably have done this myself multiple times. So if you said, oh, I need the recipe and I have a recipe ID. So recipe is equal to recipe.query.get or 404 recipe ID, and CookStep is equal to CookStep.query.get or 404, and then CookStep ID. Very tempting to do that because you're like, well, I mean, that worked, Drew. That works great. And then somebody comes along and does like, we have 3, I think. Now I have pizza with CookStep middle, but if you go back to pizza, there are no CookSteps. So that's bad, right? That's really bad. And if I do it though this way, and come in and refresh, and now I do that same trick and put the recipe 3 here and see what happens. I get a 404. So you have a bit of protection here now in your application. Again, by no means would I make this, what we're doing, a live application. It would need it would need a lot more as far as protection to be out in the wild. Okay, so we'll just leave it like that. So good, we saw that, and this pattern is a good pattern. Go in when you're doing these multiple IDs, grab things, go from the most childlike component and go to that table and grab that ID, but then connect it back to that parent one. And then once you have that, then you should be able to kind of traverse back out using the relationships. And really, we could have just sent CookStep through and then we would be fine. It's just nice to have both, I think. Okay, so we've got our step. Let's be able to go back to all my CookSteps here. So I'll save this. And we are on the show page for CookStep. And that's the wrong show page. There we are. So let's be able to go back to all the CookSteps, and then maybe it'll just be, we'll grab this. Let's see what we have. I want all CookSteps here. All CookSteps. All right, so test kitchen, recipes, and then CookStep dot index. All right, so that should get me back to all my, oh, it needs a, good, it needs a recipe ID. It's equal to recipe.id. All right, so all the CookSteps goes back here. And yes, so I can go to a CookStep and then traverse back. All right. I don't know. I would put maybe some information about this. So an unordered list, and I would have like the recipe that we're on, which would just repeat up here. So this would be recipe.title. And then I would have the CookStep title. And I would just probably say CookStep and then put CookStep title. And then I would have a description for sure. And it would be CookStep description. And then I would have how many tips there are, which is really what we already have over here. So I'd probably just copy this. And that should get me recipe ID, CookStep ID, tips, and then maybe over here I'd put another edit button, which we had on the index page, I believe. So I might just copy this. So that seems like a repeat, but for those using your app, they'll probably appreciate what you did for them. So here's the fruit step. Here's the cook step is called the middle, and there's a description, cut all the salad items, and there's 2 tips. And so that I'm just gonna leave as is. Feel free to flesh this out more. Gets it back and forth, gets us all the information out of the database. Let's go to, so we've done the show page for CookSteps. We've also done the index page for CookSteps. And now we can get to tips by either doing that or by going here and there. Let's do the index page for tips, and then I am going to leave this, and what I will do is I will upload this to GitHub, and you can download it, use it however you wish. Use it as a teaching tool, use it as your own personal little cooking project. If you do use this and you're putting it out on the internet, I highly recommend that you do a lot more security, as far as you're going to need a lot of things. You're going to need user roles, you're going to need form validation, all the things that are really outside the world of Flask Commands. Flask Commands is just helping you build those data structures and giving you some really good naming conventions, so that when you are fleshing out your app, you can quickly and easily make these links. And that was really the problem I was trying to solve. Was as you've noticed, if we've done these things, we haven't had to really go back and look at what is a blueprint called, because we had really good names for the objects that we're working with, and just able to reason it out through the data structure. Okay, so we'll go to, let me pull up my notes for tips and the index page. And that will be the last page. So let's make sure I'm on the right page. So tips, index, it says silence is golden. Let's make sure we're there with a hello world. All right. All right, so now we are going to need to show all the tips for this cook step. And we have nothing brought over in the controller. Let's come here and think about this for a little bit. So let's go to the controller that we need. We'll pull up this other controller. All right, so we're in this controller, and we need to send over all the CookSteps. No, we need to send over all the tips. Excuse me, all the tips. And then that way, so I'll just bump this down. All right, let's make this full screen. Put a comma here, tips equals tips. I have a CookStep ID, so I would do this. I'm gonna pause here and let me think about this. Okay, I have it, and I do think that's a good pattern. So, because we're 3 layers deep, so I would actually go like this, and kind of use this middle one as our anchor. So it's gonna need us to bring over some models. Let's do that. And from CookStep, I can get all the tips. But from CookStep, I can also get the recipe. And then this way I can bring over the recipe, the CookStep, and the tips. And you can see at this point, so this should, we would 404 out if the IDs don't match up, as far as a CookStep not matching up with the recipe. And so that's the protection there. And that's really what you're trying to guard against. So as long as those match up, then you're fine. And then the only issue, well, you don't have an issue, so you're able to just go ahead and get those tips from that CookStep, and then you can also traverse back to the recipe from the CookStep. So kind of using that CookStep as this middle anchor, and then going on both directions of the one-to-many relationship. So that will work. It's when we get down to the show page that we're gonna have to think how we would do that a little bit better. So for right now, let me just flush out this page, and then we'll come back to that show page. I won't leave you hanging, and we'll see how best to handle that without doing something weird or letting users do something weird. Okay, so we're in the index page for tips, which looks like we're here, and we now have all the tips. We have the recipe, and we have the CookStep. And it's just nice to have it. If I had all the tips, you can traverse back and forth, but it's nice when you have everything. So let's do an H1, which will be the recipe title, and then a H2 for the CookStep title, and then we'll just put an H3 that says the word tips. H3. All right, so you're gonna see, I think it's fruit salad, and then this is the CookStep title. Excuse me. fruit salad, the middle, and then the tips. And you should be able to click fruit salad and go back to the show page for that recipe. You should be able to click the middle and go back to the show page for that cook step, and then we'll list all our tips here. So we will put some context here. Test kitchen recipe, and then cook step. And so I'm going to pause the video and let you fill out the anchor tags for these. I want the show page for the recipe, and that being under test kitchen, and then the show page for CookStep, and that also being under test kitchen. So pause the video, see if you can fill out those anchor tags. All right, so if you're following along here, we'll put the anchor tags in. Put it in, and then we'll build out our hrefs. And a lot of this is actually going to be the same, so I'll use my multi-cursor magic, and I'll do that once I fix this. All right, so we'll have here and we'll have here. So we'll do URL for, and then it's test kitchen dot recipes dot, and then we'll put show, and I realize the bottom one's not right, but I want the show page for recipes, which is that one. And then you have to give it a recipe ID. All right, now that means this one's off, so it's recipes dot cook step with an S, CookSteps dot show, and then you're the show page, so you need both a recipe ID and a CookStep ID. Okay, so CookStep ID is CookStep.id. Excellent. So if I save that, I should now be able to go back all the way to fruit salad, and I have a problem. I did not, this happens every once in a while, right? I didn't put in something, so let's see. Oh, I didn't make it. I just have I didn't have it. This makes it use, like this is the code part instead. I just had an actual string. So if you use these symbols, then Jinja 2 knows, hey, this is code, Jinja 2 code, which looks like Python code. So we'll go back here. Let's see if I can, there we go. Okay, so now if I go to fruit salad, we're still having troubles, aren't we? So we put in that, so that was one problem. And then, that looks right to me. Maybe I didn't refresh the page. And then here's URL 4, test kitchen, recipes, CookStep, show, and then recipe ID, CookStep ID. That all looks good. All right, let's maybe just give it a second go, and if I don't get it, I'll pause and figure out what I did wrong. I guess I just didn't refresh. So this is great. So then now I can go back to my CookStep. I can go back to my middle, I can go my tips. And if I want to go back to all my CookSteps, I can go here and go back. So it's starting to feel like I'd probably put a colon there and then they would match up. Or I can just take this one away. We'll leave it. All right, so then here I need probably like this makes sense that it goes back, but in the nav bar I probably would have all CookSteps. So I would probably do something like this and give me the ability to go back to all CookSteps. Sure enough, we already have that. So that works out well. So this would just say all CookSteps. Then we can go here to this CookStep and we're on the tips. So if we wanted to get back to all CookSteps, maybe that's a nav in your nav bar. All right. Probably would also have in the index page, I typically put a way to get to a new thing. So I would do something similar to this for a new tip. New tip. And how would we do that? So test kitchen recipes, it's going to be a create, but kind of already got that from copying it over. So we'll have CookSteps and tips.create. And then we would need IDs for the recipe and the CookStep. We would not need an ID for the tip because we're actually creating one of those. So recipe._ID is equal to recipe.ID and CookStep_ID is equal to CookStep.ID. All right, so that should get us a link here to make a new CookStep. So, or new tip, sorry. So it should say /create. Let's see, sure enough it does. Excellent. And then now let's do an unordered list of all our tips. Unordered list, and we don't have to sort or anything like that. So this is just like this. We'll do for tip and tips. And then we'll end the for. We'll also do an else. And we'll end the for. All right. So then we'll have a list item. And what does a tip have on it? So let's go to our database. Go to tips. They have descriptions. Excellent. So, and it looks like I put 2 tips in here. We did that a while ago. So let's go back to VS Code and let's pull up the browser too. All right, so they have a description. So tip.description, and then probably next to it a little edit button. And I would wrap that in an anchor tag. Anchor tag here. And I think what we did on the other ones is that we made it the edit button. Where's our edit button? Yeah, we put the parentheses around the anchor tag like this. Oops. So let's grab that. And then we'll remove those parentheses on the inside. Okay, so I'll pause the video, or you pause the video here, and then see if you can do better than I did. Don't forget your double quotes. I already got you set up there for that. So pause the video there and see if you can get to the edit page for tips. If you can do that, then you have gotten, you fully understand this naming convention. All right, so hopefully you paused. We are going to not forget to escape so that we are using the code scenario, and then we'll have URL4. Otherwise, it will actually say URL4, which is what happened to us a few seconds ago. And then we'll do single quotes because these are double quotes. We don't want to stop our double quotes. So we'll say test kitchen dot recipes dot cook step dot tip, and it's steps dot tips dot edit. Excellent. And so this is recipe ID. You need a recipe ID, and we have a recipe. And cook step ID, and we need a cook step. So you can see here if the cook step and the recipe ID and the tip ID are like all off, like you would be sending them to really weird places in your app. So that's why that controller, us taking that pause and really figuring out what that controller should be was very important for the future of your app, so that you don't end up with weird things. You want to give them a 404 error. You don't want to give them some made up page where now all of a sudden pizza has a salad cook step or something like that. CookStep.id, and we're on the edit page of tip, so we will actually need to be able to go there. So we need an ID. So it'll be tip.id, and we do have tip because we're in the loop of the tips. Okay, so that should work. Let's save that and see how this can be hard. Okay, great. So this should take me to slash and then a number and then slash edit. So slash number slash edit. Excellent. Yay. Okay, and then if I have no tips, so if I go to all CookSteps and I have no tips, I'm going to see, let's see, go to no tips. And why is it at anchor? New tip. Oh, I need a thing that says no tip. That says new tip. So I need a list item that says no tips yet. Okay. And no tips yet. Excellent. All right. So as far as fleshing out the code here, I feel like we're in pretty good shape. Let's go to the show page for tip, and let's see if we can flesh this out. So I'm on tips. Let's go back to all CookSteps. We'll go to one that has tips, and let's go to the show page. So I'm on tips, so this can be hard. So in order to get to the show page, I need to make that a link. So let's do that. So it's like another link. Yes, another link. So here we go. So we're going to do the show page instead of the edit page, and essentially we can just copy this, change one thing, I think. So copy that, stick it here, and then instead of the edit, we'll go to show. All right. So now, all right, so tips 1. So we're on the show page for tips. Excellent. So let's come over here and just make sure we are on the right page. So tips show page, it says a program grows, and we can put our hello, sorry, the banging hello world there. So the key thing is you don't want weird things happening in the URL because you've got 3 IDs going on right now, and you don't want them to just start changing IDs, or if you use unique names in there, which oftentimes people do. So, this would be like salad or something. I think we're on fruit salad. So this would be fruit salad, and then the middle would be fruit salads, the middle, or something like that. You would have a name up here instead of an ID. You don't want them to change either the name or the ID, and get into weird spots in your app. You want it to be consistent. So if they end up with some IDs that don't correspond with each other in your database, you want to throw that 404 error. So let's go back here, which means we are working here. And I'm going to pause the video and think about exactly how we'll structure this. And then we'll just see that, and then that will end here. And this is where I kind of have a rule of thumb of three IDs in the URL is pretty much where I stop at. All right. I will see you. For me, it'll be a few minutes. For you, it'll just be a second. All right, so I should have thought this through. It is transitivity in mathematics. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make some notation here. We want the recipe to own the CookStep. And then we want the CookStep to own the tip. And then, so if recipe owns the CookStep and CookStep owns the tip, then recipe through the CookStep owns the tip. So it's not the tip for a different recipe. It has to be recipe owns the CookStep, CookStep owns the tip. So by transitivity, recipe owns the tip. If you're a mathematician or take math classes, you'll understand what I'm saying. Otherwise, just kind of logically think it out here. So it's you don't want a tip that goes back to not the right recipe. You want the tip to go back to the recipe that it's a tip for on that recipe, and you do that through the CookStep. And so let's see that work out. So we already know this. So this guaranteed us the CookSteps ID is this, the ID that got passed in here. Now we can do a similar thing. So this is the CookStep. Then I can do the similar thing, but move it up a step. So go to tip here, and then we can say tip instead of CookStep. So we're gonna query on the tip, and we're gonna say tips ID is tip ID. And then the tips is going to have on it a CookStep ID, and that will be CookStep dot ID, underscore ID. Okay, so then now this, you're using these two to get this one, and then you're using these two to get this one. So CookSteps definitely has multiple tips. This tip, you've used all of your variables here. You don't have recipe. So to get recipe, I would just go back from CookStep. So you can say CookStep step dot recipe. And then I would pass everything through to your template. So I would pass in, I would pass in recipe, CookStep, and tip. And this has tips, so we would just get rid of this. Okay, so that's how I think the best approach is tip. Okay. There are other ways of doing this, obviously. The way you do not want to do this, though, is you don't want to say recipe equals recipe dot query dot get or 404 and then recipe ID. And then independently come down here and say, okay, CookStep is CookStep, and then CookStep ID, and then tip is tip ID. Then the reason, we'll put recipe in here. Okay, so the reason you don't want to do this is because then you could just hand somebody any valid recipe, any valid CookStep, and any valid tip, and this would be fine, but it may not be the tip that corresponds back to that recipe. It may be a tip for a completely different recipe. By doing this, you can't do that because you have protected yourself between these two here and then these two here, and so that means this one has to go with that one. Okay, this one being the recipe ID has to go with that one being the tip ID. All right, so I'll pause. I'll stop here. I will upload this to GitHub. You can go to my GitHub, download this, keep working on it. We've spent quite a while on it. The key thing is, hopefully, if you got this far, the key thing was it took very, very little time to wire up all the controllers, all the templates, all the routes, all the models. It took a little bit more time to add in the data structures for the models, but you know what? That's your app. You need to do that, and that you're not just going to be able to, that's going to take time. That's not going to be something that you can just command line through. And then we got to spend the majority of our time flushing out the HTML pages. And if you look at the things that I have open here, there a bunch of HTML pages, and that's probably where you are going to spend most of your time, making this page look right and having the wording be just right. And in my day-to-day, I'll spend a lot of time with administrators making just certain words on a page say exactly what they want them to say, and for them that's more important than all this wiring up routes, models, and controllers. They don't even see that, and I just, in making Flask commands, wanted to take that pressure off of you so that you're not spending a lot of time trying to troubleshoot why this controller didn't match up with this template and this route isn't showing me going through the right controller. Now you have very quick commands at your fingertips to do that, and you're supercharged to make Flask applications very quickly. All right, I'll see you in the next videos, which may be it may be a new package. I'm going to be working on Flask Hotline, which will be a package that will allow you to have interactivity on your application, and I'm also going to be working on Flask Flare. So that's a package that will allow you to make these web applications look a little bit nicer without having to do too much. All right, we'll see you all in the next video whenever that happens.